I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think tonight the focus will be on the single-use plastic ban. We have
Right.
Baron here from Penn Environment to present to us and go over, answer some of our questions. I did send Baron an email, and then I think Andrew, you had also kind of collected some questions. I don't know if there's overlap in what I had sent him or not, but anyway, we'll get to that. We did have the draft ordinance from Karen Weiss that the solicitor had put together, and then Lynn had commented on, so I forwarded that on to you guys. We have a little bit to talk about the upcoming schedule associated with the single-use plastic bag ban. And then I just figured I put it on the agenda to go through the standard 2024 projects that we talked about last month and kind of nominated for making our priorities for the year. I actually don't have anything to report on mine, so if you don't, I understand, but I definitely want to give people time if they've had a chance to work on it. And then just kind of normal announcements from the township from Rick, and then if we have time, I have a couple of charts, just things that come through my feed, my email, on like different state and local activities going on. So I don't know unless there's other things to discuss. I can stop sharing and turn it over to you.
Sorry, Andy, you were breaking up a little bit there.
I guess I don't know when I cut out, but I was just saying at the end there, all I said was if there's no comments, questions on the agenda and what we're covering, I'll turn it over to Farron.
Sounds
Happy
good.
to dive in. Happy to, hold off if y'all have more questions to start. But all right, I'll just plunge ahead. I'm gonna try and keep my presentation part of this very quick, like 5-ish minutes. I'm gonna spend most of the time answering questions. Because I mainly want to answer, the questions you guys have, but I'll start with a quick overview of how we at Penn Environment think about single-use plastics, the plastic problem, and what we've been doing around the state. So I'm Farron Savitz. I'm the zero waste advocate with Penn Environment. If you're not familiar with our work, we're a statewide environmental nonprofit. We work on clean air, clean water, trying to make sure all Pennsylvanians have a safe and livable climate. As a zero waste advocate, I run our work relating to waste issues, trash, recycling, compost, but especially single-use plastics. Because single-use plastics are sort of everywhere. They're in everything, everywhere we look. It's everything from the plastic bag you get at the grocery store to the bottle you get your drink in, cups, containers, forks, straws. There's plastic in our clothing. There's plastic in our car tires. There's plastic sort of everywhere we look. And one of the big issues with plastic, and especially single-use plastics, is that we use them for just a couple of minutes and then we throw them away. But plastic never truly goes away, whether it ends up in a landfill, an incinerator, or directly in our environment. It's probably causing harm to us, to our wildlife, and to our health for hundreds of years, if not longer. Less than 10% of all plastic gets recycled. That number gets even lower when you look at items like single-use plastic bags. The recycling rate for plastic bags is somewhere around 1 or 2%. So this is certainly a problem we can't fix with recycling. At Penn Environment, we look at plastic bags as sort of a starting point when it comes to tackling single-use plastics. They're kind of the poster child for the harm caused by plastic because they're very visible. You get them every time you shop. We've all seen images of a bird wrapped in a plastic bag, a whale washing up on shore with bags in its stomach. It's very visible, the harms it can cause to our wildlife. We all hear about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and the impact plastic has on our oceans. I'm going to kind of skip over that way of talking about it because I'm sure we're all very familiar with wildlife and how plastic impacts it. But plastic bags and single-use plastics impact us in other ways, especially ways we feel at the local municipal level. Plastic bags are litter. Other single-use plastics get littered too. Plastic is the most prevalent form of litter in Pennsylvania, and flexible plastics like bags are the most common form of plastic that's littered in Pennsylvania. So it is a big part of what we find on our streets, in our parks, in our open spaces. And that takes money, taxpayer dollars to clean up. It takes money to clean up, it takes money to prevent, and it also incurs a huge cost trying to educate people about litter and plastic pollution and to prevent all this. Plastic bags often eventually find their way to storm drains, where they're a big contaminant in terms of clogging our stormwater infrastructure. Philadelphia Water Department reports that plastic bags sometimes double the cost of dealing and maintaining their stormwater infrastructure because they clog the sewer grates, they clog other water collection. When we have rainfall or heavy flooding, either we're spending a lot of hours of labor or a lot of cost to keep those clear, or we're dealing with the impacts of floods, of rainfall events, of damage. And we're seeing more and more of these rainfall events every year. So this isn't a scattered problem. This isn't every couple of years we might see this. This is multiple times a year. We're seeing the problems caused by plastic bags in relation to flooding. Plastic bags and single-use plastics are made of fossil fuels. Traditionally, that would be petroleum, but more and more frequently, that is fracked natural gas extracted here in Pennsylvania. That fracked gas carries with it very, very bad environmental impacts on our air quality, our water quality, and climate pollution. I often get questions about why we tackle plastic pollution. Why are we tackling plastic when we should be focusing on things like climate change? Well, to us, single-use plastics and waste issues are not separate from climate change as an issue. It's all interconnected. The more plastic products we use, the more plastic bags, the more fossil fuels we have to use to create these plastic products. It really creates a sort of cradle to grave problem in Pennsylvania with plastic pollution, because at every step of its life, from when we extract it from the ground to when we use it, plastic products are harming us in some way, shape, or form. We're increasingly also seeing the impacts of the transport of either raw materials or plastic to create these products. The East Palestine train derailment last year was carrying toxic chemicals. It derailed in Ohio, spilling these toxic chemicals in a community. Those were coming to Pennsylvania to create plastic products. A train derailed in the Lehigh Valley just 2 weeks ago and spilled a bunch of plastic nurdles, the raw feedstock that creates new plastic products, right in the Lehigh River. And then I mentioned before, plastic doesn't really go away. Plastic, unlike an apple or a piece of paper, doesn't biodegrade. It just sort of breaks into smaller and smaller pieces of plastic. You might have heard about microplastics in the news. They're everywhere, our air, our water, our environment. At Penn Environment, we've tested over 100 rivers, lakes, and streams all around Pennsylvania for these microplastics. We found them everywhere we've tested. We've tested tap water in 4 different cities. Again, we found microplastics everywhere we tested. We tested the Schuylkill River, which runs through Plymouth Township, as well as several other waterways in around Montgomery County. And it's a real problem because if microplastics are in our water, our air, our food, our wildlife ingest them, where it can block their airways, causing them to choke, can disrupt reproductive patterns, and microplastics carry chemicals that damage their health. But also, we're sitting at the top of the food chain. So all the wildlife that are ingesting plastic, we're ingesting too. We're also eating it, we're breathing it, we're drinking it. And so those plastics carry chemicals with them, and they impact our health too. A lot of these chemicals are endocrine disruptors. So they cause hormonal issues, reproductive disorders, birth defects. They link to certain types of cancer. There's a wealth of research, and it's still going on about the adverse impacts, but basically, we are ingesting plastic, and it is not good for us. So our solution is to cut it off at the source. If we don't create the plastic products, if we don't use them, then they can't get to us, they can't cause harm, and they won't be an issue. We've seen this work in about a dozen other states around the country over the last couple decades through bans on plastic items like bags. If you think about a plastic shopping bag, we have easy alternatives. You have reusable bags, you have paper bags. You don't even need a bag sometimes. You could use your purse, a backpack, a box, whatever you have on hand that you want to use. We don't really need these plastic items. We have replacements. And we've seen plastic bag bans work from coast to coast in other states and increasingly in Pennsylvania. Right now, there are about, I believe, 28 laws tackling plastic pollution across Pennsylvania. 24 of those passed in either 2022 or 2023. So we've really seen a massive explosion in activity in the past 2 years on this front. More and more communities are taking the step up, taking the lead. And currently, most of those laws are in Montgomery County. That is where most of them have happened, and a lot of those passed just last year. We see them in Upper Marion Township, Lower Marion, Ambler, Cheltenham, Springfield, Montgomery Township. They're all over the county. They're super impactful. The entire King of Prussia Mall is covered by a ban on single-use plastic bags, polystyrene containers, and single-use straws and utensils. They cover our biggest cities, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and they're expanding ever further. These laws are impactful. We know they work. Our national partners, Environment America and US PIRG, just came out with a report analyzing statewide and citywide plastic bag bans over the past several decades and found they're incredibly impactful at reducing litter, tackling plastic pollution, and keeping our environment safe. So that's sort of my quick pitch about what the issue is, and how we're trying to solve it. We've got a lot of resources at Penn Environment, including model legislation, which has been used as sort of a jumping off point for pretty much all the laws passed in Pennsylvania since Philadelphia in 2019. We've got research, including on microplastics, on the effectiveness of these laws. We've got sample petitions and outreach language, education. We have a map of every ordinance that's been passed in the state. But right now, I just want to make myself a resource and answer questions you guys have. I can address the questions that were sent to me or just sort of let you guys see what's important.
Thank you, Farron. That was great.
Amazing.
Great info, and I think we're all on the same page with this. So we're just excited to get it to council and hopefully get it passed. Maria, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Farron, I just wanted to ask, there was one thing I hadn't heard before about the fracked gas, fracked gas as
Mhm.
being part of the process. Could you explain that a little bit further for me?
Yeah, I mean, it's I should start this off by saying I'm not a scientist. So
Oh, well, neither
there's a
am
lot
I,
that
but
goes into the process that I don't that I'm not an expert in, but we extract a lot of natural gas in Pennsylvania, more than we need to heat our homes or power our lives. And one of the byproducts of fracking is I believe it's called ethane gas. And that ethane can be processed through it's called cracking. There are facilities called cracker plants. Most notably, there's a large one just north of Pittsburgh, the Shell cracker plant in Beaver County, that takes that gas and turns it into ethylene, which can be used to create plastic products. So basically, almost all plastic is fossil fuel based. There's some plant-based plastic where you break the plant matter down into a fossil fuel like product. So for corn, it would be ethanol or something similar. But you can turn some of the parts of fracked natural gas into plastic. And that happens in Pennsylvania. We've put millions and billions of dollars in tax breaks and subsidies into that infrastructure, into pipelines to transport it, train lines to transport it, to encourage turning fossil fuels into plastic.
Any other questions right now? All right, Farron, you
Thank
wanna work off I know what I had sent you.
Yeah, yeah, I'd be happy to. Um, so I got a laundry list of questions, and I believe a lot of these came from the survey that's been done or other community outreach on the issue. Um, there are a couple of them that we get every time we do this. Because there are so many of these laws in Pennsylvania now. We sort of have seen a lot of the concerns people have, and it's normal to get a lot of questions, to have people asking questions during the process. And often what I found when these laws pass is a lot of the questions go away, that people realize it's actually pretty easy to adapt and change. Um, but let's see. I'll just sort of go in order. So the first question I got was about stores not handling customer supplied bags since the start of the pandemic, that they won't handle a reusable bag that someone brings to the store. I think that's case by case. There are some stores like I think Aldi where they don't use plastic bags and they strongly encourage people to bring their own bag. And most of the stores I've been to allow people to bring their own reusable bags. But the ordinance we recommend would still allow paper bags to be used. It wouldn't be both a ban on plastic and paper. It would just ban the plastic bags. So people would still be able to get a paper bag at a store. We recommend putting a mandatory charge of around 15 cents on that paper bag so people can bring their own bag. But it's not like there will be no options at the store if people don't have their bag or can't bring a reusable bag. In some of these ordinances, there have also been provisions saying that stores have to allow people to bring their own bag or bring their own container to sort of combat this issue. So two different ways of approaching it. And also feel free to jump in, raise a hand, stop me if you want me to go over a point again.
Could I jump in about
Yeah.
the price point? I think one of the comments from the solicitor on the draft that we sent was about the price. I could be wrong. I think I saw somewhere that they preferred a lower price around 10 cents
Yeah,
instead of
so
15. Is this something you've seen in other places, and how does that price change affect?
yeah, we always recommend 15 as a starting point because we find it effective. 10 cents is the lowest we recommend going. So it's sort of the minimum you can set a fee and have it still be really effective. Older laws, maybe a decade or two old, would have a 5-cent fee, but we're finding that's just not effective anymore because the main reason behind the fee is to get people to remember their own bag. So 10 cents works. There are a lot of these laws in Pennsylvania that have 10-cent fees. There are a lot of them that have 15-cent fees too. No one has gone above 15 cents in Pennsylvania. There are a couple around the country where it's 20, 25, 35 cents. But we find 15 is a good balance between getting people to bring their own bag and also helping retailers bridge the cost gap between plastic and paper, since plastic is the cheaper option. But 10 cents is also a perfectly fine option to go to.
Awesome, thank you.
Now the next question on the list is about people not receiving plastic grocery bags at the store, forcing them to shop online, which is an oddly specific question. But I haven't actually seen that concern before or run into this issue where people, if they can't get the plastic bag at the store, are just going to shop entirely online. I know people who get reusable bags online and have ways of using their own bags through online shopping. But I wouldn't really worry about arguments that people make where, oh, I'm just not going to shop in the township anymore, or oh, I'm just going to take my business elsewhere or online or something like that. You'll hear people say it. In reality, it doesn't really end up happening. There have been studies done in other locations where you don't really see that many people, you don't see any change in shopper behavior or volume of shoppers with the plastic bag ban. People don't think, oh, I can't get a bag in Plymouth anymore, so I'm going to go to Conshohocken or something. And then the last point on this, I just want to say real quick, is that a lot of your neighbors have already done this. Upper Marion and the whole King of Prussia Mall has done this. White Marsh has done this. Ambler, Abington's considering one. Conshohocken has already passed one. I mean, Conshohocken is considering one. Cheltenham has already passed one. West Norton has passed one. So it's a very widespread effort. And so we haven't really been seeing this in any of your neighbors. So I don't think people are going to shop outside of Plymouth because of a plastic bag ban. Andy, you've got a question?
Yeah, so these are pulled right from the survey, like I said, and I think it was two or maybe even more actually had that about shopping online in response, which I thought was a strange response. And I think two or so also talked about shopping elsewhere. But yeah, I think with the surrounding neighborhoods also enacting this, they're gonna find their few and far between that they can end up going to. But, yeah, I think people will adjust. Just trying to look for good responses when we get these comments.
Yeah.
In
Certainly, I'd highlight the regional effort behind this. If someone raises that if a store owner raises that as a concern, you can say that, if Upper Merion and the entire King of Prussia Mall can pass one of these, you can certainly do it in Plymouth. I saw one of the questions specifically talked about KOP and White Marsh, who have both already done this. And then they also mentioned Bluebell, and I think Whitpain Township has been working or considering an ordinance, though they're not quite there yet in terms of passing one. So eventually, hopefully, we'll get a statewide law, so everyone will be covered by it. But in the meantime, a lot of your neighbors have it. There's a lot of momentum behind this, and you can highlight that fact. And I'll be sure to send around our map so you can see sort of geographically where these are located, and you'll see a strong cluster in your area.
Mhm. One of the things that I wondered was, um, there aren't any supermarkets in Plymouth that deliver. So I have to use Bluebell, but they always deliver in plastic. I only do it in the winter time when I can't go out. But so I would be, if Bluebell adopts something similar, then I would be charged 15 cents a bag or somehow give them cloth bags. This is confusing for me, so I'm sure it'll be happening to other older adults who live in Plymouth.
Yeah, so with the delivery, it's about where the store is physically located. So Plymouth wouldn't affect their grocery store that delivers to you. It would only affect if they passed a law, it would affect
Right.
you. And it does vary grocery store to grocery store how it works. In a lot of cases, you would just have to pay that 15-cent fee. Some people have tried to exempt delivery or pickup from the fee provision, but we recommend having as few exemptions as possible because it makes it confusing and it creates difficulties with enforcement. I do know some stores, someone explained to me what they do with Walmart, actually. They get groceries from Walmart, and what they do is they put a bunch of bags in their trunk and they do grocery pickup. They drive to Walmart, the people put it in their bags in their trunk, and then they drive away with the groceries in their reusable bags. Some stores, I think, will do sort of a circular process where they'll give you your groceries in reusable bags. And then the next time you just return the reusable bags to them and they give you new, and it just kind of goes around in a circle. So that's an option too. But there are certainly various ways of tackling it. And it's something, especially with small businesses, to talk to them about, see if there are ways that they can change how they function to allow the use of reusable alternatives. Because that is part of this. We're trying to get people to change from the mindset of everything I can just throw away, or recycle, or get rid of, to the idea of even if I throw it away, there's still some impact it has. So how can I reuse? Where can I find the reusable option? What is that sort of alternative?
Thank you.
Let's see. I'll sort of keep moving down the list on some of the more important questions, I think. So there's a question about paper straws, and people oftentimes feel very strongly about paper straws. Straws aren't something you need to include in your ordinance right away. You could just decide to focus on the bag issue first. Some people decide to do it all at once, like Upper Marion did bags, styrofoam, straws, and utensils all in one law, but you don't have to tackle straws at first. Our recommendation with straws, though, is always to have it be not a straight ban on the plastic straws, but rather a straw on request policy, so that stores could still give out plastic straws, but a customer would have to ask for them. And having that barrier to getting straws is actually a really great way to reduce their use, because suddenly, instead of getting a straw automatically in your drink or it's just sitting on a bucket out on the counter, you have to take that extra step to ask for it. And so you're probably not going to ask for it unless you really need a straw. But so you could still use plastic straws. You wouldn't need to switch to paper. The other option would be a reusable straw, to have stores use reusable options, which won't disintegrate or biodegrade or whatever the problems people have with some of the straw alternatives. But certainly there are ways to address issues with straws. There are ways to do it to, not cause problems for people. And then there are a
Wanted
couple
to
questions. Oh, go ahead.
Tad, I think, yeah, I was going to ask about the single-use utensils as well, because the original draft that we sent, the solicitor had info about, it also included the single-use utensils, and it was exactly what you said, available upon request, but not automatically provided. But the version that the solicitor sent back with comments, there's no mention of utensils or straws or anything like that. So I don't know if they does anyone know if the solicitor can just edited the ordinance and took that out, or because I personally think it's a great idea to include those in, but if we want to just start with plastic bags, that's still a big step.
I mean, I can go from my experience. It's often sort of a decision about the politics in your municipality, whether you think your board or council will be able or willing to pass all of them at once, or if you think it'll be hard enough just to do the bags. And so we should just focus on the bags. And then after that's implemented in a year or two, we can come back to it. But it's sort of Upper Marion, they were very gung ho. They were all for it. It was all in. So they went all in. Some places they decide, all right, it's going to be difficult to do the bags. Let's focus on one. We'll do one. And if we can, we'll come back for the others. So it's a decision you guys can sort of think about and make.
I thought it was Lynn who made those comments in there, not the solicitor, but I could be wrong. And the other thing that came up was something about some paper bags having plastic in them, so they're not recyclable. And I did some research and I sent it to everyone. It was kind of confusing because she had put that in her notes in the second document. So what if businesses find it cheaper to buy paper bags with plastic in it? Is that a way they get around it?
It's interesting because I haven't seen sort of a policy way to get around the plastic lined paper bags very easily. The language we recommend bans any bag made through a blown film extrusion process, which essentially eliminates anything made out of a plastic film, flexible plastic. So you could make the argument that would prevent putting that film lining on a paper bag. We also mandate that paper bags have a certain minimum recycled content requirement, that they're not made from old growth fiber, and that you have printed on them that it can be recyclable. So I think in that case, you could make the argument of lining the paper with plastic means you can't recycle it, and the plastic is most likely made through a blown film extrusion process. And so that could be argued is a plastic bag. It is less of an issue though than a traditional plastic bag or something like that.
But do we need that percentage in the ordinance for the paper bags? the
I
HR
recommend
unit?
having a recycled content percentage in your definition of paper because
Okay.
A, it just ensures you have good quality paper bags, and B, it makes sure you're not using just virgin wood pulp to create the bags, which can be harmful from a material standpoint.
Stores pegged
And that's
entries.
very standard. Pretty much every ordinance has those, and almost all paper bags that I see available for like bulk vending to a restaurant or a grocery store will meet those recycled content requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Andy, do you want to?
Jump in. So yeah, what the solicitor or Lynn, I think it's the solicitor, had removed that minimum percentage in talking about the paper bags. However, I think it's on the list here somewhere about the millions of trees that would be cut down or whatever in response to this. So I actually think requiring of some level of recycled paper in the paper bags is a good thing that actually helps residents accept that more. So I don't know, I think it's an important to have, so we'll have to ask about that. But I did want to recognize Bill and maybe ask Rick or Bill if they understood where or what happened with the kind of blank template pen environment ordinance that we thought we were working with in between what the solicitor sent back to us. I don't know about that process too much, or was that, do we know that was based on council's guidance or just the solicitor taking action and eliminating utensils and that paper bag recycled content?
Yeah, we submitted in last September. We said the copy of the ordinance we submitted was Penn Environment's model ordinance, and it did include the 100% or the percentage of recycled paper, and it did include single-use utensils and straws only on request. So I'm surprised that they were dropped. So I guess, Farron, maybe you could mention which other townships have kept single-use or the utensils and the straws on request. Do we have any other examples we can point to so that our council doesn't have to feel afraid of people objecting to that clause?
Yeah, I can certainly pull some examples off the top of my head. Upper Marion obviously springs to mind because they're so close to you, and they did do everything, the bags, the styrofoam, the utensils, and the straws. I believe, though, theirs is a ban on utensils and straws on request. So, slightly different from our recommendation. We just do utensils and straws on request for simplicity's sake. And to make it easier for businesses, because they often treat straws and utensils the same way. But Upper Marion is a good example you can look to for a neighbor that has done that. And I can pull other examples. And also when I send around the map, that'll tell you what each township or borough has tackled in their ordinance. So you can see there what different people have done.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the version that we submitted, and I'll just put a link in the chat in case anybody looks at it. But on page 4 or top of page, bottom of page 3, actually, talks about the recycled paper bag, meaning it contains a minimum 40% post-consumer recycled content. And I guess I would maybe challenge that dropping of those two single-use are the straws and the utensils on request, because I think there are other townships that have done it, and I don't think it's a burden on the public to have to ask. The biggest cause of pollution I see it, especially the fast food chains, is when you go through any of the drive-throughs, they stuff your bag with all these plastic utensils. And especially if I'm a consumer that would, eat my, takeout at home, I would rather not have all of that and not have to keep asking them not to put it in the bag. So I don't know that we're gonna find that the public is gonna object to that. I guess, Farron, in terms of your attendance at public hearings for this, have you ever heard the request process being an issue for consumers?
It's usually not. I've seen pushback against bans on plastic straws. You'll sometimes see either the disabled community or the elderly community push back against a ban because they require plastic straws for some of them. And some people, as a way around that, have done a ban on plastic straws except to accommodate a disability, and there's some pushback against that language too, because they feel you don't need to prove a disability to get a plastic straw. So on request tends to be a good middle ground. I haven't actually seen much pushback beyond that, except I think once a restaurant was like, it'll just take a lot of training and time to get people used to this. It'll be a hassle for us to try and hand out these utensils and straws whenever people want them. But I think once you get through the adjustment period, it should be an easy enough thing for people to get used to.
And I think I remember when you spoke with us 2 years ago, when we started this process, you suggested that we put as much in as we can because the likelihood that we're going to go back and update this ordinance, within the next couple of years is unlikely. So I think the, straws and the utensils on request is not an unreasonable thing to include. And I guess, would you give us guidance to try to push for that?
Yeah, sure. I can certainly share information, get as many examples as possible, on that front.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should push for that too. Bill, do you know more about how this process works? Was the solicitor just the one who like removed all this stuff, or
Yeah,
know, how do we add it? How do we go about adding it back, or do we bring this up at the town hall? Is that the next time we?
No, I would definitely push for it before the town hall, because by the time you get to the town hall, it's going to be already locked in people's brains and also you want to have the town hall discuss the ordinances the way it's intended to be imposed. So I would definitely get this corrected before, way in advance, because if you need to go to a council meeting and discuss this with them and get Farron on the phone at the council meeting, you've only got the beginning of March meeting, or no, April meeting, and if they want to do a public meeting in May, it's going to be too late. So I think it's important that you ask Karen to, ask to discuss that with council and get them to agree to put it back in. It's a shame that they didn't send you a version of the document, from what we had submitted in September. So, but yeah, I would just go ahead and re-ask for that to be re-added back in. And if you need to go to council, say, hey, we've got to push off the public, meeting until after we've discussed this with council.
Okay, so you recommend going to council meeting and bringing it up there?
Well,
I'll go with you.
I would contact Nick, because he's your liaison first, and say, Nick, I need to, ask that this be re-added to the ordinance. And if he says there's going to be pushback, then you would ask to say, well, can I come to the April council meeting? And if he says it's too late, then you ask to go to the May council meeting, but push off the public announcement until after you've had that discussion.
I agree with Bill in that I think by the time we get to the town hall, we should have everything finalized and say, this is the way it is, basically. And just answer questions and any hardship question people might ask.
Just to temper that a little bit, I think what we heard before, I guess from Nick, was that they see the town hall as helping them refine some of the details, like the 10 cents, etc. So just to say, I don't know that it is firm going into the town hall. I think they'll use the town hall to refine. But yes, I think things like this, whether straws, etc., are in or out, certainly like to get this
Yeah,
put
I'd
in
be,
the version that'll be shared for the.
yeah, I'd be cautious about going to a public meeting and let the public debate it
Yeah,
because
I agree.
you want the council to have settled this before they go to the public meeting. And I think, Karen, in your experience, would you recommend that we have the ordinance pretty, solid before we go to the public meeting?
I'd say have a pretty, solid, complete draft, but know where, compromises can be made and where things can change around. Um, because you don't want to have people asking questions that you don't have the answers to in terms of like, well, what about plastic straws? What about plastic utensils? You want to be able to say in this version, this is what the policy would be. And then be able, if there's just a ton of community pushback against utensils on request for whatever weird reason, which I absolutely don't expect to happen, but just for example, if that does happen, you could then remove it from your draft before it comes up for a vote to address those concerns and alleviate any issues. But you want to make sure your draft is fairly solid because if it's just sort of like, well, we could do this thing or this thing, then the public doesn't really know what's going to happen. And you don't want to surprise them by adding stuff in later. So
I
that's
agree
my
with Byron
experience
and
at
Bill.
least.
As a former council member, I really feel that we need to be pretty firm with our ordinance before we go to the town hall. I really do. Maybe some wiggling here and there about the price, but I want to start at 15. We don't know what businesses are even going to show up that night, so they might just be kind of ambivalent about it and expected since a lot of Montgomery County has already initiated this.
Yeah, certainly the level of the fee is somewhere you can wiggle on. You could come with it at 10 cents or 15 cents. Just
Right.
make sure you have the fee in the draft.
Right.
The length of time of the rollout, whether it's sort of 4 months before provisions take effect or 6 months or a year, that's something you could change between a town hall discussion and a vote based on community feedback. Things like that are good areas to discuss with businesses, the public, see how long they need to adjust. Yeah.
That's a good point. Rollout is important too.
Are there other questions on this front, or should I address? There were a couple larger sort of groupings of questions that I want to hit.
Go for it.
All right. So the sort of three I want to cover. The first one is recycling of plastic bags. The second one is people who reuse plastic bags, either for trash can liners or for pet waste. And then the third one is studies saying that paper bags and reusable bags are worse for the environment than plastic. Because those are three common things that come up a lot. And I saw these questions a couple times in the survey responses. But starting with recycling plastic bags, you've probably seen drop-off bins at various stores where you can drop your plastic bag off and it gets recycled. And I get a lot of questions about what happens to those bags. Are they getting recycled? Or people saying, how can you say most of these bags are ending up in a landfill if I drop all of them off at the recycling drop-off? Like, isn't that the solution? The issue is plastic bags can't be recycled in single stream recycling and with normal recycling equipment. You need specialized sorting equipment, you need specialized equipment to process them, and recycling's a market, it's a business. The content you get from a plastic bag isn't worth very much because there are so many plastic bags and there's not that much can be turned into. So the plastic bag drop-offs that go to recycling, you may drop off your bags. The likelihood they're getting recycled is very low. There was an analysis by ABC News last year where they looked at drop-off locations around the country, including in Philadelphia and the city of Chester, and they found almost none of the plastic bags that they dropped off at a recycling drop-off actually got recycled. And in fact, the company that runs a lot of those drop-off locations around the country or keeps a tracker of where they're all located closed down the program and deleted that page of their website because there were so many complaints about the fact that these plastic bags weren't getting recycled. So the cold reality is the drop-off locations will be great if all those bags are getting recycled. It's likely only a fraction are actually getting turned into something else. Like some of them might go to benches, some of them might go to uniforms for a business, but the vast majority end up in a landfill or an incinerator. So it's certainly those drop-off locations are not the solution. And it's very fair to say that plastic bags are almost never getting recycled. And I saw that question in there, and it's a common one. Another common one is I reuse my plastic bags. I line my trash can. I use it for my pet litter. Which obviously for those people who do it is great. It's great that they're reusing their bags and not just throwing it out after one use. The problem is most people don't reuse their plastic bags, and even those that do likely only reuse it once before it ends up as waste. And this is where we get into sort of a trade-off. The people who are reusing their plastic bags now, once you ban them, will have to buy trash bags, or will have to buy pet waste bags, or find an alternative for the dog poop or the cat litter. But if you look at just the sheer weight and volume of plastic, banning the single-use plastic bags eliminates far more than you see an increase in people buying trash bags and pet waste bags. So from an environmental impact, you're having a much bigger impact getting rid of them. And so for the people who are doing the right thing and reusing it, you can suggest sustainable alternatives or recommend that they look for other options. But when it comes down to it, getting rid of the plastic retail bags is going to have a much greater impact than allowing people to keep on reusing them. You can certainly reuse paper bags as trash can liners or litter pickup or dog poop pickup. There are reusable options out there, which are a little funky, but are becoming more and more used. But it's a common question, and it's always important to acknowledge they're doing the right thing. But when it comes down to it, the ban is certainly better for the environment. Andy, you have your hand up.
Excuse me, I thought some of these are certainly very good comments and thoughts. This one I was thinking that besides just the plastic two-handle bags that you use for taking your groceries out. I mean, there are other bags that are still allowed, even your Ziploc, baggies for your sandwiches or whatever, take them home, wash them. Bread bags, dump out the crumbs, reuse them. So it actually surprised me once I started thinking about it, how many different plastic bags there are that are just in packaging, etc., that could be used for that same purpose. So, I was initially looking at this and having some concern, but actually when I started thinking about it, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of plastic packaging or other things that I thought could be used for this that we're actually
Yeah,
right
and
now, I was throwing it.
And certainly produce bags are a common alternative people turn to because this only applies to the bag you get at checkout. You can still get those handleless produce bags you use for raw fruit and vegetables. There's still plastic wrap allowed for raw meat and fish. So this certainly isn't getting rid of every single piece of plastic out there. My grandparents live somewhere with a statewide bag ban. I visited them over the weekend. They have a stash of produce bags they've gotten over the years that they use to wrap up things that leak or that they want to keep, separate from other things. So you can certainly save and reuse those, find alternatives to grocery store bags. But yeah, it is a concern that could come up, probably will come up, but I think there are easy options that those people can turn to.
There's even compostable bags too, small
Yes.
garbage bags. Yeah.
Yes. Which is another question I saw in the list of questions. And that's an important point too, is biodegradable and compostable plastics. For the retail checkout bags, we consider a bioplastic bag, a compostable plastic bag, an oxo-degradable plastic bag to be a plastic bag for the purposes of our plastic bag ban. So we ban them like the conventional fossil fuel plastic. a lot of these alternatives, you often see them colored green with the word sustainable written on the side, or eco-friendly, or they'll call it an eco bag. If you look at the fine print, a lot of these alternatives out there require industrial scale composting to break down, or will only biodegrade in very, very certain conditions that just don't exist anywhere in Pennsylvania or really anywhere nearby. So that bag is going to act like plastic. It's going to break into microplastics. It can be litter. It's going to be harmful. It's got a lot of chemicals in it too to create it. So our recommendation is to ban them and not allow them as an alternative for checkout. Certainly using a biodegradable pet waste bag or a compostable pet waste bag is something people can look into and look for good home compostable options. But as far as for the purposes of the bag ban, we consider all these alternative plastics to be plastic. And our definition, that's why we have a definition of plastic in the law to make sure they're covered too by the ban. So that's another important point, and it's something you'll see a lot of companies try to switch to because they think it makes them look better having the green bags, but really it's just a green plastic bag that's not good for the environment.
My worms couldn't compost it down.
Yeah. I've seen them sit in like a municipal
It just-
composting pile.
Yeah,
You know, the big
it
ones.
sat in my in my compost bin, didn't break down. Had garbage in it, but it didn't break down.
Yeah, it's a problem. There are some that are home compostable that will break down in your backyard or in a municipal lot or something. It's just you have to really, really check, and the standardization and labeling just isn't there right now. So it's hard to navigate, and for that reason, we want them banned. And then the last thing in the big categories is sort of the idea that plastic bags are better for the environment than paper or reusable. You'll see people pull out studies or life cycle analyses. There was a study that made the rounds in the national news about a month or two ago on this front. From our position as an environmental organization, plastic bags are the worst option for the environment. Bar none, they're the worst. A lot of the analyses that say paper has a higher impact or reusables are worse for our climate cherry pick the data. They look at it from a very skewed perspective. And there are a bunch of these studies often funded by the plastics industry. The one that came out like 2 months ago was paid for by the plastics industry. And the people who did it even said we cherry picked the data to make it look the most surprising and shocking for the news. But basically, from our perspective, plastic bags, they're made from fossil fuels, so they're bad for our climate. They contain a ton of chemicals that are bad for our health. The process of creating them is bad for our air and water. It's really hard to recycle them. So our options are landfill, incinerate, or they end up in our environment, and they're going to keep breaking into microplastics, which are toxic to our health and the health of our wildlife. Paper bags aren't great, but they're better than the plastic, which is why we allow them. But that's the reason for the fee. So we don't replace the plastic one-to-one with paper. Philadelphia doesn't have a fee on paper bags. And we saw a year after their law, a massive amount of paper bags flooded the city. And that's the biggest type of bag people are using. And paper bags have material cost, a waste cost, a water cost. So the fee helps reduce that problem. And then the best option is the one you bring from home and reuse over and over and over again. Even these plastic industry studies say it takes 75, 100 uses for a reusable bag to be better for the environment than a plastic bag. Well, if you go shopping once a week, that's 52 uses in a year if you just use it once a week. So that's less than 2 years of using a bag for it to be the best option for the environment. And that's in the studies funded by the plastics industry. So, you know, sort of the worst case scenario. So we firmly believe reusing a bag is the best option that you can do. It's what you should encourage people to do. There are all sorts of programs that you can implement, like a give a bag, take a bag program so that people can get reusable bags. The fees are an effective way to get people to reuse their bags. But if people bring that up, is this just virtue signaling? Isn't plastic better for the environment? Pretty unequivocally, we can say plastic is the worst option. We want people to bring their own bag. So that's sort of where we stand on that. Question.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned there, life cycle assessment, LCA, for different bag options. To be clear, I mean, there's many different environmental impact calculations that can be done with life cycle assessment. Microplastics in terrestrial or water is not something that LCA looks at, period. There is no calculation method that's approved for that. There are some studies, there's some work being done in being able to calculate that as an environmental impact, but it is not anywhere close to being accepted. So that is not included in any LCA that you will find out there.
Yeah. And that's one of the big problems. People don't look at the microplastics issue, the chemicals in plastic issue. There's a study a couple weeks ago that said just looking at a handful of the chemicals in plastic, I think they looked at 5 or so, there are hundreds of billions of dollars in costs in the healthcare system caused by the impacts of these chemicals in our plastic on human health. So it's something that's not really looked at when you have these life cycle analyses or these comparisons of bags. And it's part of why we think plastic is such a bad option, because it's so damaging to our health.
I had a question. In the enforcement part, who does that? Who does the enforcement?
So my answer on this is often at first very unhelpful, but it is case by case basis on the municipality. It varies everywhere who does it. You have places like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh where they have existing departments who do enforcement of codes and all these different things. Pittsburgh hired a staff person to do it. You have some places like Lower Merion or Westchester where they have a sustainability staff person in their township and they're a point for enforcement. My recommendation, just don't overthink it. You're not going to need to hire a bunch of new staff people. You don't need to have the police breaking down doors, seeing, are you using plastic? It's simply a matter of how are you enforcing your active parts of the code? Are there quarterly health inspections or annual health inspections of businesses? How is compliance done for other laws? And then do that for the plastic bag provisions too. Because if you're already doing inspections once a year even of businesses for other violations, you could try and add a checkbox for plastic bag violations. One thing some places have done to kind of add on to this and ease the enforcement burden is an aspect of citizen reporting. So if you have a way for people to report potholes, downed power lines, or other issues to someone in the township, you could add a category for plastic bag violations. That way they can flag if a business isn't following the law, and then the township can talk to them, see what's going on, work to get them into compliance, and make it a very cooperative process. Because we don't want fines to be, the first recourse. We don't want to be charging a bunch of businesses a bunch of money right away. We want it to be collaborative, cooperative. That's why we give a decently long runway between when it passes and when it goes into effect. But really enforce it how you would other laws. Try and make it not, burdensome or overbearing on the businesses. Make sure to have warnings and a dialogue be the first option. And only if they absolutely refuse to engage or absolutely refuse to change, should you then go to fines. But there are some places like Westchester who have had this in place longer than most other places. Last I talked to them, they said they only had one business in the entire township that had violated the ordinance and then kept violating it after they were issued a warning. Everyone else either followed it or once you issued a warning, they got in compliance. We did a study of Pittsburgh's law. We released it today. We found over 80% of businesses in the first year of enforcement were following the law. Most of them were in compliance, and that's just with one person in the city of Pittsburgh doing all the enforcement for all their businesses. So it's amazing how a little goes a long way with this stuff. You'd hope most businesses are going to follow the law because it's the law and it's the right thing to do.
But so that can all be addressed separately. It doesn't need to be in the rule.
Usually you include enforcement in your ordinance we have recommended language around like an escalating fine structure, and you can input, who the bottom line is for enforcement, if it's going to be a code enforcement officer, if it's going to be someone in, the township manager, administration, or something like that. You would include that in the ordinance. But it's something that, you can discuss with the administration, with the township, and work out. And it can also change over time too, how the enforcement's done.
Yeah, there's a section on enforcement, but not, it just doesn't, it specifies what the penalties are, but not how they're identified or, that.
Yeah.
And one of the comments that I sent you talked about the expense of bags and not being covered by food stamps or SNAP. Do you, I don't, that's something, I mean, I'm not too familiar with what to say or how to get around that. You have any feedback on that?
So there are sort of two answers to that question. The first part is that usually, because it's a small fee on bags, and we want people to bring their own bag anyway, you can create ways to get reusable bags to the low income community. That way, when they go shopping, they can avoid the fee completely because they have their own bags. And so like in Philadelphia, we're working on getting a fee added to that law. It passed city council last fall, though the outgoing mayor didn't sign it, so we're working on it again. But there's nothing in Philadelphia's fee about exemptions for food assistance. On the other hand, you could include an exemption to the fee for people who are on SNAP, WIC, or another food assistance program at stores that accept those benefits. We recommend this language to Pittsburgh. It was something we worked with in community meetings with them. And you could just have that provision there, so people on those programs wouldn't have to pay the fee when they shop. Again, I always recommend against having exemptions because it can make things difficult or more burdensome in terms of enforcement. It makes it more difficult for the businesses. But so my first recommendation is always make sure that low income residents can get reusable bags. You could have a central location where people can drop off reusable bags if they have too many, and then people who need reusable bags can then pick them up. And the give a bag, take a bag program sort of thing. That's worked very well in a couple different places. But as sort of a last resort, you could write into the law that people on SNAP or WIC are exempt from the fee. So even though it doesn't cover the purchase of it, because they're on those programs, they don't need to pay the fee.
And the other one I had that I wanted to ask about as I go back to the list was germs and so forth. People saying that these reusable bags are and to spread disease, etc.
Throw them in the
I don't know what the
washer.
study is that, but
There is a very, very concerted effort by the plastics industry during the height of the COVID pandemic to convince people that reusable bags were unsafe and that plastic was the way you could stay safe from COVID. Not backed up by any actual science. There was no actual basis for this. They just said it, and they got a bunch of bag bans across the country rolled back. The reality is, if you wash your bags regularly or just maintain them well, then they're perfectly clean, perfectly safe. I saw a study once comparing bacteria on reusable bags to other types of bags, and they found trace amounts of E. coli on a reusable bag, but less than the naturally occurring amount that you'd find on like a head of lettuce. So it's really not a concern that these bags are dirty or unsanitary, especially if people take care of them. And certainly things like raw meat, raw fish are still allowed to be packaged in plastic. people can still have produce bags for raw fruit and vegetables. Bulk items like nuts and things can have packaging. So there are ways to alleviate the concerns around sanitary questions. But again, reusable bags are perfectly safe to use and healthy to use. Just take care of them like you would anything else. I have reusable bags that I've been using continuously for over a decade, and they're perfectly fine and very clean. And haven't had any problems with them.
I do want to call at the time, and I don't want to cut off questions. I think this is a very important topic for us in the coming months here still. But I do want to say let's try to wrap it up in about 5 minutes here or so. So any last thoughts or questions we?
Bill has his hand up.
Yeah, I guess in terms of the way the public meeting runs, Farron, would you expect that most questions would be answered by the EAB rather than council? Because the EAB is the one who has prepared and studied this and met with you, and so they be the first ones to answer questions? What's your experience and how many public meetings do you attend, or are you willing to attend if they invited you? And what's your experience on how a public meeting is usually run? Is there a presentation by the EAB at the beginning, or does council just say, yeah, here's the ordinance, we're opening it up for questions, and then they take everybody's concerns and then they cave and give in to all of these issues that we've discussed, or what's your experience?
It's very variable. I go to as many public meetings as I can that I'm invited to. And even some of the ones I'm not invited to. But depending on if I can make it, I'd be happy to be there to answer questions, give a presentation. I find some of the best public meetings have a presentation by the EAB at the start, or a presentation by me or someone else from the environmental community, just to outline why are we doing this, what are we doing, and some of the details. That way you can sort of head off a lot of the pressing questions, but also show this is a real issue we're trying to address. This is why it's a local issue. We're not just talking about like marine ocean plastic. We're talking about plastic in our specific waterways impacting our health. And this is a high impact thing we can do in the township. And then it sort of depends how knowledgeable or up to date your council members are. Because if they feel they can answer questions, then they can be the people who answer questions. But I often find it's good to have the EAB on hand, at least a member, to help address the questions. So like I was in Abington a couple months ago. I believe it was November. And so I did a presentation, a member of their EAC did a presentation, and then their commissioners were able to ask questions and members of the public asked questions. And the two of us just stayed at the podium and, fielded the questions as we could. Because we were the ones who sort of had the answers to it. And I think that's a better way of doing it. And also trying to address questions as they come up. I've been at a couple public meetings where they decide we're just going to take questions and not answer any of them. And that can create sort of a cycle of negativity because people can voice their fears or concerns or what have you, and then you're not actually addressing them, and so it just feeds into some people's worries or anxiety. So it's always better to address what you can at the meeting, but also be upfront. You may not have all the answers on the night, and you can follow up with people, collect contact information if you can to follow up with them. And make sure this is an ongoing dialogue and process. No one's voting on anything that night. You're trying to figure out how people feel about it, and go from there. I do also want to say, often the loudest voices at public meetings are the negative ones. That's the case with any issue, usually. So it may seem like there's a lot of negativity. There have been some public meetings where you'll get Lower Marion, I think, is a good example. Lower Marion, their board of commissioners had like 5 pages of public comment that was sent in ahead of the meeting, all in support of their bill. And then the 2 or 3 people who spoke at the public meeting were against it. And so the people who were the loudest voices were the voices against, but there were a lot of people who were for their ordinance who sent in comment. So that's another point to make.
If you weren't able to be there in person, is there like a 3-minute intro that Penn Environment has that we can access to show at the beginning of the meeting?
I could certainly film a video if that's what you're asking, or like
Well,
have some sort
if
of
there was one
remarks.
already made, I'm just thinking if you weren't available, I think that might be helpful, kind of an intro to the issue with the key facts. If you weren't available to do an actual in-person presentation.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
could certainly create some sort of like introductory comment, or like how people give public comment. I could give a video comment or something if I'm not able to make it in that event. Also, I could send along resources or talking points, or like, a short script of what I would say, that
Okay.
you guys could either share and say, we have a comment from Penn Environment here that we'd like to read, or just, say it yourselves. I'm
Okay.
happy to let you guys use our talking points. I
I
don't,
was just
yeah,
thinking kind of out loud. Yeah, thank
yeah.
you.
no, I think that's a good idea. So what we've heard so far, from Nick at the last meeting, the outline of the town hall would be us opening with about a 20-minute presentation he gave us, to open with, about 10 minutes to go through the council, and if they have anything to say, they provide their comments, their thoughts on it, and then open it up for public comment. So that would be a half hour then of open comments potentially. But no, I mean, Sharon, I love all of what you said there in terms of, maybe just some talking points, maybe here's a statement from Penn Environment, or if you want to record something, or if you can be there, all of that, and, any of that would sound great to me. But I do think, you know, maybe it doesn't make a difference, but I guess hearing it from, their own EAB, not feeling like the state or something's coming in and saying you need to do that, might resonate with people a little better. So, I'll plan on going ahead and presenting there or something, having some comments to present. Okay, I don't know, anything else here, or we'll move on, which will still be on the plastic ban, just to,
I guess I did have one last piece on the 15 cent. I think it would help to have the ordinance state the 15 cents and then have it negotiated down if the public really objects, because the trouble is that if you start off with 10, nobody's going to ask to have it raised. Whereas if you ask for it to be 15 and you get a lot of, real valid pushback, but I think most of the public was not going to there's just going to be those few loud voices that object. And I think 15 cent being a better deterrent, because the objective here is behavior change to get people to bring their reusable bags. So it's not really an economic question for most people. It's really getting them to, because I think if we leave it at 10, people just say, well, I'll just absorb that. I'll pay 10 cents on my bill every time I go and just take paper. But if they see 15 cents accumulating up, they might think twice. So White Marsh has a 15 cent fee, and being our neighbor, I think, there's a good argument to be made that could be our consistency with White Marsh.
thanks, Billy. I think that's on a list of a few things to go to Nick with. And so, we'll just kind of continue forward, but my chart is still going to be on the plastic ordinance. So again, here we just heard Farron talk through. We're gonna discuss a little bit more, just on what the schedule looks like. And then we'll get into the projects announcements, and I'll probably have to wrap up there. Anyway, May 29th is our date as of right now, unless we find some reason to push it back because we need to, request some revisions, need agreement, to reach agreement with council. May 29th, 7 to 8 p.m. has been selected, in coordination with council and Karen Weiss. So please, circle that date, try to attend if you can. In preparation for this, so speaking before we get into these 3 points here, Andrew, do you have good notes on? I had like 3 points. You just want to touch base with me, and would you be willing to reach out to Nick, or would you like me to do that?
Yeah, sure. I can write to Nick. I can put a. Do you think we should draft everything just in between all the, our group, and then send it to him once we make sure we hit everything?
I personally, I'm thinking don't delay. Let's try to write him as soon as possible and just say we have these points, and then say we'll get you, or we can get you our proposed revisions or comments to what was provided by the solicitor. But I would try to give him a heads up here as soon as possible. I don't know how often they really speak. I know they kind of done for this month with their formal meetings, but
Okay.
I'd like to get it to them quick.
Okay, so I won't send a draft to you guys first. I'll just send something to Nick, and if I miss anything, you guys can chime in. Is that all right?
Sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, just coordinate on that. It's got the fee, it's got the cutlery or plastic
And straw.
straw. It's
Right.
got the recycled paper bag content. And those were the 3 things that I've highlighted.
Yeah, I agree. Those were the big things that were cut out of that. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, let's try to hit those in an email. All right, so on these 3 kind of preparation things for the town hall, I saw your email, Maria. Sorry, I didn't have a chance to
That's okay.
incorporate it into these charts and everything. I haven't looked at it either. But I
I
know
have, I also have something about the education. I put together a PowerPoint, just a couple slides. So if we get to it,
so Maria has put out a draft that you did send that to everyone, Maria, or was it me?
the poster. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have, if I could share my screen, I could pull it up, I think. Let me see. I'm not,
It-
I don't have rights to share my screen.
Could we, would it be okay? Did you send it to everyone? Would it be okay to try to cover it in email for an hour and 22 minutes?
Yeah,
in?
sure. What happened is I don't think it came through correctly. I had trouble when I colored in the bag, but I'm not an artist, so and I did it in
Uh,
Word, so I didn't have Adobe or anything.
All right. Please, when you see that from Maria, please do try to be responsive and provide comments back. Andrew, you had put together the website, at least content. We got a lot of comments about some art, even trying to involve some students or something to provide some art, some coloring, if you will, of that content. But I think the
3%.
content was pretty good. Any comments, thoughts further on that you wanted to cover here tonight?
Yeah, I guess most of well, that I built the page off of the draft we had sent. So a lot of that information is either not included in the one that we received back from Lynn. So I'm not sure, what to do. Like, should we, I guess we should go forward with emailing Nick and trying to make those changes before we publish the web page.
Yeah.
But if those changes aren't going to be made, then I have to change the web page information before it gets published.
We need to do that quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think we want, a month right before the town hall. So
To
we
have it
got
up.
about- Yeah, we got about a month.
So we have
Yeah.
April 29th to May 29th. That gives us a month to pull it all together.
Yeah, I
But
think that's possible. We can easily do that.
Andrew, do you think we're going to need to go to, or somebody's going to need to go to the next council meeting to talk about why they took that stuff out and why it's important to keep it in?
Yeah, we'll see what Nick recommends. If he recommends doing that, I'd definitely be happy to attend with you guys and make a case.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I did see one more thing that was left out. It was the signage requirement section. I'm not sure. This is probably less important, but Farron, do you have any experience with municipalities leaving out a signage requirement, or do the signs help?
I strongly recommend including the signage requirement. It serves sort of two purposes. The first is you can tell which businesses are paying attention and know that the changes are coming down the line because they posted signs. So like it's a way to educate businesses, make sure they're all prepped for compliance because the signage usually happens a couple months before enforcement happens. And then it also just educates the public because if they're going into a store and at every checkout they're seeing, oh, no more plastic bags at this point, and I'm going to get charged for paper, you're more prepared to bring your own bag when the time comes. So I recommend including the signage requirement because it's a key piece of the education. And education is such a big part of making sure the rollout is a success.
Thank you. Yeah,
But
and I guess the bigger stores or the chains should have this stuff on hand from other locations that have implemented a similar ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, in Philadelphia, we saw stores putting up signs being like, because of city council, as of this date, we're going to stop using plastic bags and we're going to start charging for paper. Even though the charge wasn't in the city law, they did it anyway and they put it in their signs because they had those signs from elsewhere. But it's usually fairly simple to create just sample signage on the website. You could even take some other townships, if they're willing to share with you, take their signs and put Plymouth instead of White Marsh or Plymouth instead of Upper Merion, and have those available for download, as a way to just make it easier to have the information.
what is your maybe you said this earlier, but what's your recommendation from the time it's passed to roll out? How many months?
So our base in our model is for the first 30 days, nothing happens. After 30 days, stores start to post the signage.
Okay.
90 days from passage is when enforcement would happen. So, in the first month, nothing. After a month, signs. After 3 months, so a quarter of a year, is when the provisions take effect. A lot of places extend that to 6 months for the enforcement. Some people do it as a year. I recommend against going to a year and definitely avoid going longer than a year. But you can play around with those. Like if by the time you pass it, that 3 months is going to be the Christmas shopping period, maybe accelerate it or bump it back a month so you're not making the businesses change during one of the busiest times of the year.
So if we
Um,
put it in January 1st or something.
some
that
people
makes
do
sense.
January 1st, some people
Yeah.
set it at Earth Day. It just sort of depends when you pass and what things look like. And then also like if a retailer says it's going to take me 6 months to get paper bags, or it'll take me 6 months to use up my existing plastic bags, you can take that into consideration too for the timeline. And then some places have exemptions so that a business can apply to be exempt for an additional 6 months so that they get more time to come into compliance on a case by case basis, um to extend that timeline. So timeline is a way to be, accommodating to the businesses, get them, see what they need, see what they want, and work with them there.
Thank you.
Right. And the final thing on here, the presentation for town hall, I'm For that, I just put in those links of some other older presentations and the survey summary to kind of use as some ideas on what to present at the town hall. And then we already talked about maybe Sharon providing some information before, and just go through the why and the what, the details of what the ordinance will cover. And I just take the opportunity. Sorry, I know, Andrew, I told you I would have that updated survey summary infograph to you today. I didn't get, but I'll work on it by this weekend. So moving off of plastics, any last thoughts on the plastics, and also Baron, then I guess you could drop off if you want. Thanks for an hour and a half. But first, just any last
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.
You guys have my
Wonderful.
contact info, so feel free to reach out with follow-up questions. I'm sure either you'll be hearing from me or I'll be hearing from you as we work through the process, but I'm happy to be a resource.
Thank you,
Thanks a
Farron.
lot. Very
Thank
helpful.
you
Yeah, it
so
was
much. It was great.
wonderful.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
Farron.
Thank you.
All right. So I'll be really quick because I don't have anything to report on the energy transition plan with all the plastics work going on. But that is kind of also one of the reasons why I would hope to keep the town hall as May 29th, because I do really want to get to the energy transition plan stuff this year already. Uh, it's pretty obvious it's going to happen late summer or into the fall. So, but anyway, I have nothing to present today. So, Naya, do you have any thing to say on the rooftop solar? Any questions or anything you've already been looking at?
Uh, we can discuss that in the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I just what Rick said the other day that it is not possible to install the solar panels on the new Plymouth office building. So are we thinking about like considering other buildings as well? That was my question. But yeah, we can discuss that like in the next meeting.
Uh, just correct me. I think the new township building just had very limited space with some different equipment that was placed up there. I don't know, was there actually like a weight issue or anything that was saying that could not be done?
Yeah, I don't know any of the structural engineering part of it. I just know that with 5 rooftop units and a screen up there now, and police antennas, there's really not, there's a very small footprint, so but I don't know anything. I'm not I can't speak on the engineering of it, what it can hold. I would assume it would be able to. We probably have to talk to, it's a brand new roof. We have to get some type of warranty with the roofing company if we're going to penetrate that for solar panels. But I will say there's very limited space on that roof.
Thanks, Rick. Andrew, anything on the open space fund?
No, I don't have anything. I've been focusing on the plastics, but yeah.
And then Maria, you said you did have a couple of things you want to look at.
Yeah,
on the
I
routine?
actually have like 4 PowerPoint slides to go over. If you could give me rights to share, I'll go over it real quick so we can close out the meeting. All right, here we go. Oh, there's the plastic bag thing. You don't want me to bring that up, do you? Did everybody see what I sent you? with the plastic bag. I sent it this afternoon.
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay, I'm sorry, the blue bag has informational change already on it, but let me do this. Okay,
Yeah, we're seeing
okay, all right, let me I forgot how to do this. Okay. One of the things that I thought was a upcoming event where we could do some education was a township day. One of the things that we don't want to create more waste. So, one of the things that we did at the December 9th thing was do a single sheet of the fact sheet on some of the topics we were talking about, and we could come up with a list and just put, just a couple facts together and then either have a barcode or a scan code or have them on our website with more information. Other things that I thought we could do are short videos on a laptop. I'd be willing to take my laptop and have it fully charged and have a external battery if we need it. And uh, I know from other years, you had great posters from different things as well. So the things that I thought about was, oh, that was the EAB education, since we're, doing that already. Um, another opportunity might be having quarterly sessions at the community center, on solar, on the IRA, home rebates. Pennsylvania is behind, so we have plenty of time to pull that together. Cutting energy costs, composting. We talked a little bit about sick trees, grass to garden, importance of pollinators, habitats, reduce, reuse, and recycle. How do we do that? So there were just some thoughts I jotted down as possible educational opportunities, starting with the township day, but also to do an ongoing information sessions, maybe at the community center. I don't know what time of day or how we would do that, but I thought, as education is important to all the things that we're doing environmentally, we need to, start somewhere. Anyway, that's all I have.
Oh, how difficult it is to get a room at CPCC or, I mean, it's a good central location.
Well, I was thinking, you do it well in advance, and if we do it quarterly, you know, we could have it. I hope they would. I mean, they wouldn't charge us, I hope, for the room to do education. But just thoughts.
So, Andrew, and I, along with Karen from White Marsh EAB, we wrote environmental education proposal for DEP, which was like, unfortunately, looks like we didn't get it because they were supposed to announce it in February and it's already March. So we have the plan and everything, and we at that point we had asked both White Marsh and Plymouth Township for various rental spaces, and they had just donated all that space time. We could just have 4 hour, up to 4 hour, to conduct all these sessions for free.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I can share that with you.
Oh, I'd love to see it. Yeah, great. Thanks, Lena. Andrew.
Thanks. Right. Here, so Ricky did a whole chart, announcements from township. I don't need to share. Anything,
Hearing you, but I really don't have anything, nothing much has changed since last meeting. So I really don't have any announcements, unfortunately.
I was trying to look at any notes I had on. What's the March, completion dates for the township building marching along or?
For post list tomorrow morning at 9, so, yeah, I mean, they're substantially complete, but they'll be there uh, another month to do punch list items. Unfortunately, the furniture won't be here till the end of April. We had to push the furniture back several times and they had no dates. So there's gonna be will be delay in moving into some spaces, but hopefully by 30 days from Friday, they'll be out of there. We can have contractors.
All right. Thanks.
Yep.
So just some news I had compiled here, and I kind of put it on here, and don't really, yeah, it's not like I practice the charts or anything. So let me see what I have. Just at the so I apologize to everyone that at the last EAB meeting I did not bring up the EAC network conference. I think it was just a couple days after that meeting, the weekend after. Maybe you still could have signed up for it if you had a chance, but Bill was able to share a lot of information on the conference, so it is available out there for everyone to review if they wish.
Are you going to share the PowerPoints with us and send them to us? What we have in front of
I
us?
think it's all posted there on what we have is posted on the SharePoint.
Okay, that's the thing. Okay. That's what I couldn't get into. I've been asking everyone to help me get into the other day.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna ask if I just sent you the ordinance. Didn't have time to troubleshoot issues
Oh,
here,
no,
but
that's okay. Yeah, I
yeah.
don't know why I couldn't get into it the other day.
All right. Yeah. Let's talk about it, I don't know, later in the week or something.
Okay,
Maybe
that's fine.
we can try to figure that out. Wanted to put up this one. A lot of these things, I mean, I'm just putting up things as I see some news on them. I don't know. I don't really know what the PA, Senate, House, where they really stand on some of these bills, and I can't talk too much on them, but I'm just sharing them so you know what's going on at the state level a little bit, and I can check these out and take more in if you wish. This community solar would be something great, really help a lot of the households that, putting solar up on their roof wouldn't be an option due to obstruction or just roof issues or not, apartment dwellers. Um, all of those types of people could go in on a community solar facility and purchase their solar electricity from that. And I think that would even extend. I don't know if this bill is it or not. I think maybe there's some other ones, but even get into townships being able to set that up for themselves and for residents kind of pile together. I don't know, Bill, correct me if you know any better, or if anyone knows any better. Um, that's what that bill is on. It's very, very interesting, very beneficial if we could get that passed. Next one, 734, modernization of the electronic waste recycling. I thought a lot of this was already required, but I guess this is modernizing that regulation. And it does say, this one specifically said can be recycled at no cost to residents. So I don't know where the funding would come through for the state, but that'd be very interesting and a great convenience to residents if that could get passed through. And then there was a bill 1058 in the Senate that is a rather than a helpful thing, it was attempting to repeal some of the regulations that for us, PA participating in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, or RGGI. For those that aren't familiar with that, it's kind of a, I don't know if I say cap and trade, if that's the exact language that would be used in that RGGI or not, but it's a way of capping the carbon emissions for the state and requiring fees for them and so forth. And that's been approved, is enacted in a lot of our surrounding states. New Jersey, New York, I believe, both participate in that. A lot of Northeast US participate in that. The PA has been a holdout. Again, if I'm saying anything wrong, please go ahead and just jump in. I can't see hands or anything right now. And then the last thing I had here was this grant application, ECNR, in the C2P2. I'm not too familiar with it. Again, just something that I saw in my emails. So, it did seem, there's a lot about, environment, tree efforts, education efforts around trees and nature, and so forth. So I don't know, Andrew, if this was something maybe that you had come across. The minimum project value was 50K though, and most projects did require a 20% match. But if it's for environmental justice, then that would
Yeah.
be no match.
We've been working on an application for the C2P2 community watershed forestry. Lena, myself, and Karen from White Marsh. I've been working with Rick to find a couple spots around Plymouth to target for riparian restorations. So I think it looks like right now that we're going to submit an application. There's like 4 or 5 different hoops to jump through, and different ID numbers to get with the state, and different registrations, all this crazy stuff, but we're working through it, and I think we should be able to submit it.
Great. Thanks for pursuing that. Sorry if I'm having a hard time keeping the different grants straight and what you're pursuing. But that's great to hear. Good luck with that. I mean, sounds like you got the crew there. I don't know that I can provide any assistance, but let me know if I can help.
Thank you. Yeah.
Locally, just some of these things actually. Bill, you had sent. If you didn't send out a bunch of the ones on the previous chart, I think you sent out these things about Upper Dublin. One of them is past here with their annual environmental open house back on March 19th. So I don't know if there's any material, anything you can still access on that. But I still wanted to include it on the chart because I just thought it was a really interesting event, and that's their 3rd annual one. So just something to keep in mind, maybe jot down in your calendar for next year if you'd be interested. Bill sent out the little agenda for that open house. You can refer back to that email. And then another article on the Upper Dublin Township building, which was designed as a net zero building. Not too long of an article there, pretty brief, but doesn't provide too much information, but it was just interesting to see how progressive some of these different townships and so forth are being. It would be interesting. I don't recall, maybe I read too quick. I don't recall how they funded that. I'm kind of curious if they got a lot of state assistance or something for a net zero building. And that is all I prepared. Now that I'm stopped sharing, sorry, Bill, I can see your hand up. You want to correct everything I just said?
No, all in a good summary of what's going on. I just heard that today that the community solar bill got approved through the Consumer Protection Committee this morning, and I was on a hearing last month where there were so many positive testimonials from labor to the consumer advocate to a whole bunch of people. So it sounds like it's on a good track, and the fact it went through committee this morning with no negative statements was also a really good sign. So it may be ready to go back to the House, and I'll keep you guys in touch if I see it come up for vote. I just regarding the environmental at Upper Dublin, that was really well run. They did tabling in the lobby with different, service providers. A couple other EACs were there. Whitpain EAC was there, and one other, but they have an auditorium as part of that. It was part of their library complex. So in the auditorium, they had the EAB or EAC give presentations on different topics. So they spent an hour and a half roughly going through maybe 20 different topics, and then the tabling was open for people to browse before and after that. So it was really well run. And Colleen Felicki from Backpost Composting was there, and she was really impressed with it. And she sent me a note, and she said, "Hey, if Plymouth EAB wants to do something like that, she'd help you guys organize it." So it was really well run. We could get some information from Upper Dublin on how they pulled it together. We do have another opportunity coming up on Saturday, April 27th, if anybody's available to do tabling at Conshohocken Green Fest. I was there last year, but unfortunately I have a conflict on Saturday the 27th. So if you guys would like to table on what the environmental board is working on and meet the public, and even though they're not our neighborhood, they're still neighbors that might be interested in hearing more. It'd also give you an opportunity to network with the other tablers that are there. Last year I ran into high school environmental club at White Marsh High School that Colin and White Marsh that sounded like a really motivated group. So it's just a good, well-run day, and I'll forward their information. They're asking for people to start registering. It's going to start at 11 and goes from 11 to 2. So it's not a big day. Anyway, so those are the comments I had.
Thank you, Bill. Any other comments? Anything anyone wants to add? All right, then. Any motion to adjourn?
I make a
Anyone away?
motion, we adjourn.
Thank you, Maria.
A second.
Thank you, Andrew. I thank you all for staying on for the long meeting, and appreciate all the involvement, and it was a great discussion. So you guys have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody. Take care,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Take care, all.
Bye.
Bye.